Hello, I'm Rebecca, and I am doing Stoats Impact in New Zealand. Now, I want to briefly talk about the biology of these guys, as they have a long, slender body, and that is with a brown coat and a white underneath. And these guys often get mistaken for other species in the Mustelidae family. And the best way, especially like weasels, the best way to identify these guys is basically by looking at the black tip of their tail. Now, that's one good way to identify it, and not only that, but they are much larger than weasels. Now, these guys can live up to 4 to 6 years, and they can weigh from 6 to 9 ounces, and can be from 7 to 13 inches. Now, if you're thinking about how they can attack their prey twice their size, it's pretty incredible, especially rabbits. And rabbits can be twice their size, and basically their hunting tactic is to go and wear it down to where it's not able to run anymore. And that's when they'll hop on their back and make the kill. Now, these guys, they can eat a variety in their diet. They can eat birds, they can eat eggs, they can eat other small mammals. Basically, anything that they're able to catch, they are more than willing to eat. Now, going off of the book, The Natural History of Weasels and Stoats, they've mentioned something that's very interesting, as the stoats in New Zealand are much larger than the stoats in Eurasia. And the reason this could be is because the prey that's in New Zealand are much larger. So they had to adapt in order to take down such prey. Now, these guys are killing machines. They will constantly keep killing. They will go after prey and basically hardly stop. When they catch prey, they'll eat a little bit of it, and then they'll like store it for later, and they'll go hunting again. And once you're thinking about how much damage these guys can do, they'll just keep hunting, and so it can really make impact on the native species populations. Now, when it comes to reproduction, females can be pregnant all year due to inflammation. And with this, it can be very difficult to find solutions in order to deal with the large amount of breeding females. And what's also interesting is that the females, they can be pregnant when they're 6 to 8 weeks. Only difference is with a young female, she'll be just keeping that sperm, and when she's ready and old enough to have young, then she'll be using that. So it can make it super difficult, as these guys are rapid breeders, and they can have large litters, anywhere ranging from 5 to 12 kits. So, a lot of articles said that some even had litters as big as 20. But basically, when they're breeding at such a rapid rate and you try to keep down, it can their population can come right back up, especially with how diverse the litter can be, as the female will mate with different males, and there can be up to 3 fathers in a litter. Now, we're going to be going into how they were introduced. So, basically, a man called Francis Dryard Rich, he is the owner of Bushley Park, and he introduced rabbits to be used as a game species. Well, as the rabbits had no predators, they basically took advantage and doing what rabbits do best. They repopulated. They became into outstanding numbers to where there was more rabbits that could be hunted. And it led to problems to where the rabbits were really impacting agriculture. They were impacting a lot of crops, and they're really ruining pastures for sheep. And in New Zealand, the wool industry was very big at the time, especially when these guys were like introduced in like the 1879 as like as the stouts were to control this species, just because they were losing money. It was just causing so many damages. So stouts were introduced, and by that time, they tried to find an animal that would be able to tackle winters and be able to uh, be a natural predator to take these guys down, as they previously used ferrets, but ferrets didn't last the long winters as they kept introducing them, and so that's when they went to find stouts as a replacement species. And when they did that, they transported large amounts of stouts to where there was 25 known shipments, and within each of those shipments there's like about like 300 stouts in each one, and a lot of the stouts had a low mortality rate. So with them being constantly introduced, and them a lot of the stout shipments came from different areas, so as they were being introduced in New Zealand, it caused so many different gene pools, and it provided a lot of diversity, which also led to the success of how the stouts got established. Now, even though stouts did take care of some of the rabbit populations, they didn't take care of all, and they just started going after bird species, and as with the shipments came along rats, and so it introduced another predator that can be impacting the native populations, and overall it just caused a lot of issues. Now, as I mentioned before, with so many shipments being added in, they had so many different genetics and getting involved. Now, when they were getting introduced the second year, they had 224 stouts that were released in the population. There was a small bottleneck effect. However, due to so many shipments, they ended up as they were breeding, new rare alleles started coming up and mutations, which again increased their odds of surviving. And when with so many diversity, they are able to tackle so much prey, and being true predators and able to survive many conditions, they just flourished in this area, and to where they had abundant prey, there was no other predators, and just lots of diversity. Now onto the impacts. So these guys will affect native vegetation, and a lot of the native vegetation that they mostly impact is beech tree forests, which there's a image I have that'll be shown later on, but basically it affects like this seed cycle, especially that so many animals depend on, and as there's much more seeds and more things to go around, there's an abundance amount of prey, and it just affects, and that attracts the stouts, and this will overall affect seed dispersal as well. Now, the biggest issues that stouts cause is that multiple bird species are affected. As you can see in the top right corner, we have the wicca, and those are basically endangered species, which the stouts did not help with. And then there's the brown kiwi that's also getting affected, and with so many, and that being New Zealand's natural icon, it led to a lot of people that love nature and the locals, they get really upset with stouts, which I'll also mention later on. Okay. And then it affects the Hudson's steer waters, which they impact like 20.25% of the breeding adults, and they affect 12% of the chicks during the breeding seasons. Now, according to New Zealand's Department of Conservation, there is about 68,000 kiwis left, and 2% of our unmanaged kiwis is lost every year, and that's about 20 kiwis a week. And so, as you can tell, they will just greatly impact. They'll just eat the eggs, kill chicks, and even go for adults. So it makes a lot of bird species, especially endangered bird species, like populations decrease. Now, over here on the right, you can see the wika that was just killed. You can tell right by the neck, it has the puncture wounds, so that's like a good indicator that a stout has taken down this animal. Especially you can see with other bird species, as well as the rabbit, they will just go at the back of the neck, and when the animal is tired, or they'll capture them at night too, and that's when they'll just make the final kill. Now, they're basically, they affect the cycle of different ecosystems, because they will, if there's like a large amount of rodents and small prey, and as that population increases, so does the stouts. But once that population of rodents decreases, it limits prey, and that's when the stouts will start going after more bird species, as well as other prey items such as reptiles and small lizards as well. So it really interrupts the natural ecosystems that are in New Zealand. Now, because of the damage they do, especially to the kiwis and a lot of the beloved birds, stoats are not welcome. They're very much considered a pest. They see them as a total enemy. They want to just wipe them all out. The same with rats and possums, and just referring as stoats as a menace, and just really taking down bird species. So, yep, and you can see the little stoat acting like it's in jail. But as I mentioned before, there is the cycle with the beech forest. So there's like a large amount of seeds that are produced, and then it leads to the rodents increasing. Then the stouts feed on them, and the seed rats or germinates, and the starving rats, and they turn to the eggs as well, and so do the stouts, and this leads to so many different predators going after these naive prey species that don't even see the stoats, or even the rats for this matter, as a predator. And so that's why they're also greatly impacted by their presence. So how is it being managed? So a lot of these was leading to biological control, which would decrease fertility, which would be especially very useful for seeing how much the females can breed, and they will just constantly keep breeding, especially like after they've had young. After a couple weeks, they're ready to breed again. So, and another option was the mass culling of stoats, and that worked for some areas in New Zealand, to where they've just completely wiped them out in like smaller areas. But again, that's a very expensive and not only that, time-consuming thing to do, and it's not exactly effective, as you can miss some and they can just repopulate again. And not only that, but we also had the predator-free 2050 goal, and it plans to eliminate rats, stoats, and possums. And it basically uses kill traps, which, as you can see on the right-hand side, there's like 2 stoats in it. They have like a long wooded box, and then they have an egg in the one side, which you can see right by this little stoat's foot, and they have the metal trap that, of course, immediately kills the stoats basically on impact. And another thing for the 2050 goal, like with using the traps, they've gotten the public more involved. So they have a lot of volunteers to help set traps, and there can be over 300 traps in an area to try to manage the species population. And so they bring awareness by doing backyard trapping, and that was one way to also educate children, because if they believe it, like if everyone gets involved, it's easier to deal with this species and trying to take it down. And also like the use of PAPP poison in rat and possum remains, and to use as bait. And this not only targets the stoats but feral cats. And as I was reading more into this, article mentioned that even though that's like very effective because they use like the rats as bait, you know, because like the rats will eat it and then it'll lead to the stoats. Well, if there's like a small amount of rats are taking it, you're going to be at least chance of getting stoats. So that problem of it being more effective. And not only that, there's still more research being done on that poison if it affects like other non-targeted species, for instance, like reptiles that might eat the prey or scavenge. But the most that they found is that it does not affect bird species, which is their main goal to protect, as a lot of them are endangered. Now, with this slide, it shows basically the overall cost with the landscape projects, the funds, the design, management and monitoring, as well as the research projects. So about 23 million for the 5 predator removal projects from 2016 to 2020 in New Zealand. It was found in the New Zealand report, and they will be managed like a new plan will be created every year for management. As of June 30th, 2019, 9.4 million of committed funds is yet to be drawn down, and 19.5 million in funding the Provincial Growth Fund, and this is supposed to cover large landscape projects over the 5 years in the new predator control project development over the 12 to 36 months. So they aim to target all predators. And even though like on paper that seems like a very good idea, they're doing it over a wide range. And doing so, that can take much more money and time. And even just with doing monitoring, it's just more difficult to do it on a larger island compared to where they were doing it more small scale before on other parts of New Zealand, to where they were successfully able to get rid of stoats. But it's still a problem to where it's just doesn't seem very accomplished. It might not be accomplishable for that time frame, especially since it might be just increasing as they will have a chance to keep repopulating and to take down more predator species all at once. Now, this is basically a schedule of the predator free 2015 limited for the year 2019. So this is just what I briefly went over. So this is what they actually went on funds and like with their investment. So as you can tell, there is a lot that went into it, and especially with all these other projects being 26 million and just being very large amounts. And it proves how difficult it is to take care of this species, especially when it's already well established and have no predators and is just flourishing in this kind of environment. So in conclusion, these are very powerful predators besides their small size, and they did not become a successful biospecies, especially for rabbits. And even if they were to take down rabbits, and which is like basically their goal, and other rodents, something can happen to it. It'll still, like, if you get rid of the Stoats, like, one population will increase than another, so it'll fluctuate between the predators, it seems. But they became a failed result of biocontrol, and because of the impact, they managed to be a very expensive and extensive plan to remove all predators from the region. And only time will tell to see how the results by 2050 would be to remove such a species. Now, thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day. And here's my references and photo references for some of them that I just wanted to add on just in case. So, yep. Have a good day.